I'm going to make one guarantee with this video. I can halve the amount of time it takes you to tidy your workshop after each project or halfway through projects just by giving every tool a specific location where it lives. Because at the end of the day, unless you're just going to throw everything off your workbench into a box or onto the floor, this is going to save you time and effort, and it's going to be a lot calmer and easier to do. Okay, let's clarify one thing before we crack on with the video. French cleat is not the cheapest, it's not the easiest, it's not the simplest solution to your storage needs. But in the video, I'm going to show you why it's the best. Or what I think is the best. Because you could go with a pegboard. That's probably the most efficient and maybe even the cheapest. You could go with cabinets. They're going to keep your stuff dust free. But there's very little flexibility in that. Or you could just leave all your tools on the floor and trip over them all the time. I've personally gone down the French cleat route because I love it. But I love it for its flexibility. I love it for its creativity. And I love it because on those days when I come down the workshop and I can't really get my teeth into a really heavy duty project, I'll make a couple of French cleat tool holders. And then after 5, 10, half an hour, I will have something that I'm satisfied with, and it gives me a feeling of peace within my woodworking. And don't worry, I'm going to give you a solution to the dust issue afterwards. But don't get me wrong, those of you that don't go for a French cleat option and you want to make permanent tool holders on your walls, I think you guys are going to learn from this video hopefully as well. Maybe get a bit of inspiration. Anything you leave on the floor, you're going to sweep around and it's going to collect mess and dust around it. So if you can have a clear floor, then that's going to make your flow within your workshop 10 times easier. So even if you don't go for the flexibility of the French cleat wall, maybe you'll just pick up a few ideas for a certain tool that you were struggling to figure out how to get it up on the wall. And I've also come up with some ideas for super efficient use of space. Take a look at your own French cleat wall or storage wall. Look at the gaps between things, underneath a shelf, places like this, where you think, well, actually, I could probably fit a fair amount of stuff there. And one of the simplest and the most effective French cleat holders I've ever made that will hold everything you need on a daily basis. Because why have it spread around? May as well have it in one place. So, before we get to the fun stuff of showing you the best of the French cleat holders that I've had before and the newest ones that I've put into the collection, we've got to do the boring preparation stuff, but we'll rattle through it really quick, don't worry. Let's get into the most asked question on any French cleat forum ever. And that is, how big should your French cleats be? How far should they be spaced? And how do you put them up on the wall? Well, long story short, however you like, and however you like. It's up to you, because there's no real set, perfect way of doing it. I will tell you what I've done, and you can adapt it, because to be honest, I did a finger in the wind measurement, and I just thought, what looks good? There are a few pitfalls to avoid, and I'm going to quickly go through those as well. As you can see, mine are up on the wall, and there's a backboard behind them. This is the first pitfall. Personally, I do not recommend putting the slats straight on the wall, because you're going to have a lot more holes, and it's a lot more work, and it's a lot more effort, and it's not worth it. What you should do is put them on a backer board first, and then put that backer board onto the wall. You can whip them off whenever you want to and move them around if you need to. Cleats, I've cut all of mine just out of plywood, make it out of one sheet. In fact, let me show you, because most people will say you need a table saw for this. That's not entirely true, because I've done all of this with a circular saw. The first thing that I've done is simply paint the OSB. I've used a matte paint, black. Again, it's barn paint I had left over from the workshop. All of this is made out of scraps. Then you just pick how wide you want the cleats to be and cut them all. For this, I've just set my circular saw to a 45-degree angle, not been too hard on myself to get it absolutely perfect, and then I've taken my time with a straight edge and I've just ripped off as many cleats as I want. The easiest way of doing this is probably to leave your circular saw at a 45-degree angle and cut every cut with a 45. But because I wanted to have a flat edge on the bottom, I've put it 45 to start with, run it along, and then I've sliced each cleat off with a perpendicular 90-degree cut instead. And so you just have to keep switching it back. As with cutting any plywood, if you want a great finish, take the depth of your circular saw to just over the width of the plywood or the thickness of the plywood, and that will give you the least tear out on the top side. Once you've got all your cleats cut and you know what size you want the board to be, What I like to do is run a bead of glue the whole length of the backboard and then run screws in through the back. Gives it a nice aesthetic from the front and it gives it more support on the back. One thing to note here is if you want even spread of cleats, just get yourself a offcut and make 2 blocks, and these are going to be your spacers between the cleats for every single one of your panels. That way you're going to have a nice cleat spacing across the entirety of your wall, and it's going to look great. Not only that, but each one side by side is going to have an even height so that you can span those gaps like I said earlier. A few little tidy up points. Take the sharp edge off the top of the cleat, you don't need it. And if you're going to risk catching yourself on it, better to remove it now. Quick block plane gets the job done. You want to stain them, stain them. You want to paint them, paint them. Do what you want at this stage. It's your wall to work on. So now you've got your wall up. Now the fun starts. And this is where you can start making your holders to put your tools in. This is one of the heaviest ones I've made. This is my hand plane till, and you can make it whatever shape and size you want. I'll show you some other ways to store your hand planes a little bit later. But what I want to show you is that this is one of the few that I'm still using the old-fashioned, if you like, the original French cleat on. I say this is one of the few that I'm using this on. Normally you'd use this on everything, but with a new one that I've made, which I'll show you in a second, I'm going to show you an easier way. This is heavy, so this needs these. So this will be used for all the heavy items, whereas the other two are going to be used for the lighter stuff. So let's get this on the wall. There you go. One thing that I found really important when I've been getting everything back up on this wall and making the holders for all of the different tools is take a look at this space and don't picture it like your regular pegboard, because it's not the same thing. A regular pegboard style of storage will have everything pretty close to the wall. Pegboards don't tend to use too much depth, and that is where the French cleat system really eclipses it for efficiency, because you've got to start picturing your wall a bit more like a box and see a foot and a half away from it as usable space. For instance, when you're putting your clamps on there, put 7 or 8 on one of the holders. And you're going to see with some of these extra ones that we make that you can just stretch that depth out a little bit, and it makes a huge amount of difference to what you can store up on that wall. As I've just got myself a really cool laser cutter, I thought, why not make a few other ways to hold things up on the wall? The first one, a really simple French cleat bracket. Now you could print these. If you've got a cheap laser, you don't need the best. All you use is a program, draw it out, then set the laser to cutting it. But I thought I needed something a little bit more versatile. So I took the same at the back and I made a 90-degree shelf bracket of sorts coming out the front. A couple of knobbles on it. Now they are important for your clamps because the last thing you want is the clamps jumping off the end. Let me show you how this has progressed some of the cleats so far, and you're going to see these a lot. The thing that is worth noting is if you don't have a laser cutter to make these, there's plenty of places on Etsy that will sell you them, and they're fairly inexpensive. These, they look thicker because I've glued 2 together for a bit of extra strength, but it's still the same system. One other feature of these brackets that I've knocked up is a really simple but effective one, because when you put it on a French cleat, there's this area at the bottom that will hit the actual wall. And that means that you're not going to get sag on it. Also, there's a gap, so if you want to put a peg between that and the cleat, you can lock these on so they're not going to bounce off when you pull your clamps off them. This is the easy way that I can show you how a new bracket has changed the way that I make these French cleats, because this is the original clamp holder. All it is the French cleat on the back, and then I've just screwed in the 2 supports on the front. Now, it's not a great system because they rattle around, it takes up a lot more space, and it's not very secure. This way, I can use one bracket, shape and size, I can get multiples of them, and then I just put a piece of wood in the back at different widths to support the entire thing. Far more strong, far more efficient, and well, let me show you the clamp in it. Whatever clamp you are planning on putting up on that wall, that block of wood should be about 1 or 2 mil wider than the metal of the clamp. That way you won't get any swing and it will sit straight on that holder. Now, I'm not saying I'm chucking away all of my old holders because some of them still do an amazing job. I'm certainly not changing my card scraper holder, which is just blocks of wood stuck together with bit spacers in between them, and each one of your card scrapers has a really nice little home to stay in. I'm not changing the way I store my spoke shaves. Looks good and they're easy access. Marking gauges? No need. These are the boxes that I made to go on my old French cleat wall. And this isn't the best way of hanging a box. That's where the new cleats come in. This is the best way to hang a box because there's no support beneath this box and I wanted to keep it fairly flat so I can put it on a table. But what I then realised is, well, you don't need to. Just put a French cleat on the side of your workbench. So whenever you pull a box off the wall and bring it over to your workbench, be it full of screws or whether it's full of screwdrivers, whatever's in it, you just clip it on the side of your workbench on a cleat and you haven't got to worry about it being flat. Huge bonus to consider. If you use a circular saw to make your cleats, you're gonna get a wobbly edge. It's just the way it is. The circular saw wanders with the 45° on it, even with a straight edge. However, it's not a problem if you're using these as opposed to the old-fashioned system because you've only got 2 points of contact. So it really takes out all of those wobbles up on your French cleat wall. That's a big benefit. Let's take a second to build something. And this is the first of the cleat holders that I think is truly different. Different from what you've seen before, because if you lay out every item you use for every project, I would guarantee you have similar ones to myself. You've got things like your pencils, your marking gauges, your favourite square, your favourite tape measure, a block plane, your favourite cutting knives, things like this, marking knives. All of these items need to be in one place because why would you want to go to 10 different French cleat holders or 10 different drawers to get everything that you need for one project? So lay them out, arrange them on a piece of wood, cut the holes for them, cut spaces for them, lay them out, and then think in 3D. So why have a shelf that doesn't have a second shelf or even a third shelf underneath it with cubbies in it to hold the rest of your items? Because every shelf you put on a French cleat, in the same as any normal shelf, has a load of space beneath it for the brackets that doesn't tend to get used. And not only could you use it for this, but you can actually use it for something else that I'm going to show you on the next ones. And then once it's ready, hang it so that you can reach it within 1 arm's length of your workbench. Because not only are you going to be grabbing everything from it pretty much on every project, but when you come to tidy that workbench, you want to be able to put it away super quick. I use a lot of pocket holes, and that's probably because I haven't learned traditional joinery and I'm just building things. So I need my Craig jig close to hand. And what I've always had it on before is a shelf. And this is where doubling down on that efficiency is going to give you a lot more options and a lot more storage space, but also it's going to be one of my key upgrades to what I've done before. Why have a tool where you don't have the accessories next to it? Here's the shelf I had before. Look at all that space underneath it. Let me show you what I've done with it. Small adaptations to make it far more efficient, doubly efficient. And it's not complicated. I've just made a really rough drawer, put it under the shelf, so I can keep my Craig stuff in it and still have the Craig jig on top. See, you might think that 2 jointing planes, 2 number 7s, is overkill. Well, it is. But instead of just sticking them on a shelf, I've done what I told you about before. I've made a shelf drawer. So inside that drawer for the planes is everything I need for the plane. And so when I put this on the wall, and you'll notice it's only on 2 of the laser cut brackets, I can then span a gap between 2 of the French cleats. So it doesn't matter that I don't have a French cleat wall behind it. I can just put it all the way across and it holds it nice and tight. It's not going anywhere. Didn't stop at 1 though. Oh no. I've got more hand planes, so I made another one. And that sits underneath it. So I've made the most of all that space. You see, originally I was a big fan of these magnet bars, and they do have a place. This reminds me a bit of a pegboard though, in the fact that all of your tools have to be flat. And if you think this much space with a depth of about this is going to cover probably about 12 to 15 chisels, I've gotten rid of all of these for the big items and I've gone super space efficient. This is twice as many chisels, files, rulers as I could have fit on that magnet board. And as you can see, the space it takes up on your wall is significantly less. All I've done is laser cut a lattice box. You could even cut this yourself out of ply and throw it together. With these little brackets on the side, this holds all of my chisels and all of my files wherever I need them. I have, however, kept one just for the small things because, I couldn't think of a better way of doing it. You don't have to make fancy holders. You don't have to spend hours knocking these out. In fact, for years, this saw hung on a peg, and all that peg was a piece of French cleat with a dowel in it. Every time I pulled it off the cleat came with it. So just attached two of the brackets to the original cleat. So now this sits on the French cleat wall and the saw stick sits on it. Easy. You will have seen the sandpaper rack from the old shed. One of the first things I made, in fact, and there's no need to change something if it's not broken. Handy shelf on top to put your sander on as well. But I use two different types of sandpaper, so I made another one. Now, these brackets are really versatile. You see me use them on a shelf. Not only can they be used for that, but every single one of my tools, I tried to use these first because they're the most efficient holder I've got, and I'm really proud of the next one. If you saw my Melif tool video, you'll see that this glue gun is something I highly recommend. I'll put a link down in the description because I've used it so much since, but I wanted to make a way of holding it that didn't go sideways on the wall, because sideways, ladies and gentlemen, is not the most efficient way. So instead of putting this like this, make yourself a cool holster. So this goes in, the gun sits in it, and you've got every single one of your glue sticks just in a handy little box on the side. So whenever you need to pull them out, you can. And this is accessory next to tool. Also, you can see when you're running low. This is just a rag box. Stick your rags in the top, pull them out, a couple of French cleats on the side, easy. But there's an efficiency in this that is so small that you might not even think about it. I could have hinged this lid, have it coming up, so when you fill it, you could do that. But that's 2 inches of space that I need to allow for this to be hinged. Why not just put magnets on it? Slide it off, put your rags in, slide it back on. That way, if you want to sneak down on it with whatever's above it, you can do that. It's worth also noting, you don't need to do the cleats right to the ground. Leave yourself a foot space because frankly, you're not going to be hanging something that close to the ground. Leave yourself a decent amount of space and then put all of your long objects closer to the ground. Clamps are great for this, but also something as simple as just having a grinder on a French cleat so that you can hang that flat against the wall. You make a few spares of these, which are the clamp racks. You could use them for your tapes. That way, they're always on hand. How do you choose what to put on the wall and what not? Well, to be honest, I have a rule. If dust sticks to it and you can't just get rid of it quickly, it shouldn't be on your French cleat wall. If you use it for a lot of jobs and you're going to use it, I don't know, once a month, it should be. Gloves, vital for me. Same lid technique as before, no hinge, just have them on hand. I see these hanging sideways. I see them like this. This jigsaw is a pain. You don't want to keep the blade coming out every time. So why not make a shelf, put a hole in it for the blade to sit in. The saw sits on top and the drawer underneath is for all your spare blades. It's not an angle I normally show you, but we're going to whiz through the rest of them. I've got all the accessories for my power tools. So I've got my router bits up here and I've got my Forstner bits there. Let's talk dust. Dust gets absolutely everywhere. And most shops have got more dust collection than I have. I'm working on that. But in the meantime, I said to you, there's a way of clearing the dust off this in seconds. Well, you need 2 things to do this. Let me show you them. So, when you come to clear your dust out, first thing, portable fan at the back of the room, pointing towards your double doors. Second thing, spend 20 quid on a leaf blower, or a mini leaf blower. This thing's incredible. All you need to do, make a holder for it, take the nozzle out, attach it, and then go to town on all of your cleats. It takes seconds, but what you are doing is you're moving the dust in the right direction. You're taking it up off the cleats and into the air. Wear a mask, turn your fan on because it'll at least make sure it's going in the right direction, and then That will clear your entire wall. You still have to hoover the floor and sweep it. Or sweep it, then hoover it. This is another conversion from just 2 brackets with a load of stuff screwed onto the side. I've got a board with my chargers on it so that everything is up on the wall for that. All the batteries I can clip in and clip off. And I've just made a really exciting discovery online that you probably already know about for battery storage. These little things screw onto your wall and then mount your batteries. I've got these for my Makita. They do them for all sorts of brands. I think they're just 3D printed. The reason I've got these is not just to store the batteries, is because I don't want to leave anything charging overnight. So when I come down in the morning and open up my workshop, the ones that need charging go on the charger. Then when I leave, they go onto the full side. And I can rotate it like that without having to check every battery, or worse, getting caught without any charge. No one wants that. Under here is my X-Tool laser cutter, and I do a lot of projects and I kind of rotate things. So I've got a really small French cleat wall right here, and on it are these laser cut boxes that I showed you with the brackets. Each one is for incomplete projects or completed projects, so that it keeps all the bits and bobs, all the little things together. Having just a small French cleat wall there means I haven't got to have things in boxes underneath and on top. And I can't do a French cleat video without telling you the unsung hero French cleat that I never thought would be my favourite out of all of these. You've seen 30, maybe, French cleats. This one here is the best. Hands down the one I use the most. Hands down I'm the proudest of, and it's so simple. Check out the second video I did. I'll put it in the description, but this is a French cleat bin. Put it on your workbench. Have it there for when you wipe away everything that's on your workbench, all the sawdust, all the crud. Then, if it gets in the way, have it on the wall. If you want to see the bin in all its glory and some of the other French cleats that I've made, I'll pop it in this video. If this is your first time to the channel and you've checked out no videos so far, you've just found us, that's going to be the best one to start with. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you over there.